portion of this video is brought to you by Squarespace. Hey, welcome back to the channel, and if you've been in the market for foldables, there's really not a lot of options right now, and probably the best that you can buy right now at the time of making this video is Samsung's Z Fold 4. It's accessible all around the globe, and it's Samsung's fourth iteration into this foldable phone market. So they've done a lot since the first launch to really take over this space, but somewhere in Asia, Xiaomi wants to take over and put a ton of pressure on Samsung with their Mix Fold 2, which I actually did a review on it not too long ago. I've been using the Mix Fold 2 since then, but soon after that review went up, I got my hands on Samsung's Z Fold 4 thanks to my buddy Jaime from Pocket Now. So let's go ahead and see what the biggest differences are between these two foldables and see which one I personally would go for. So kicking things off with its display, this is probably the biggest deciding factor when it comes to foldables. It's about how the display looks and, the overall feel in your hands. So the Z Fold 4 features a 6.2-inch AMOLED outer display, which looks sleek and makes the phone look taller, but also more compact at the same time. But the Mix Fold 2, on the other hand, has a normal looking outer display, but it's also AMOLED, but at 6.5 inches, and this makes it feel like you're using a normal smartphone, which I personally love. The inner display on the Z Fold 4 is 7.6 inches, which looks beautiful in my opinion. Now, the Mix Fold 2 from Xiaomi, though, features a bigger 8-inch display, which has an odd aspect ratio that's more of a square versus a rectangle like the Z Fold 4. And while this allows for a better multitasking experience with, two apps running side by side, watching videos on that inner display looks a bit off sometimes. So if you don't love seeing those black bars above and below your videos, you're gonna see a ton of that on the Mix Fold 2. Now, the Z Fold 4 also supports Samsung's S Pen, which you can buy as an accessory, which is something I really can't say about the Mix Fold 2. There's no accessory that you can purchase directly from Xiaomi to do the exact same thing as the Z Fold 4, with a stylus. And another thing that you can't do on the Mix Fold 2 is output videos via the USB-C port and have a desktop interface thanks to Samsung's DeX integration. But then again, how much of that are you really going to use on a daily basis? Those are all really nice features to have, but as someone who owns a laptop or two and a desktop computer, I don't really need my phone to be my computer. Now, touching on its overall design, there's a pretty big difference here. We just talked about the size difference between the two in terms of its display, with the Z Fold 4 being more compact and more narrower, but when the phone's actually folded, the Z Fold 4 is actually much thicker than the Mix Fold 2, and it doesn't fold completely shut either. The Mix Fold 2 is a lot slimmer compared to the Z Fold 4, despite it having a bigger display, and it also shuts completely flat, which I love. Both phones are still pocketable, but yeah, the bulkiness of the Z Fold 4 will definitely be more noticeable here. Now, circling back around though, I feel like the Mix Fold 2 looks way better here. I love the camera module placement on the Mix Fold 2 versus the Samsung Z Fold 4. It just looks super plain in my opinion, and it's not all that exciting. Also, with this kind of camera placement on the Z Fold 4, it wobbles like crazy on a flat surface, which you can't really say about on the Mix Fold 2. Where the Z Fold 4 excels though is this hinge. This is Samsung's fourth iteration on the Fold, so they really nailed it down and, they really have it perfected. You can basically open and close the Z Fold 4 at any angle, which I can't say about on the Mix Fold 2. I think all that's left for Samsung to do here on the next version of the Fold is how to get this part to completely shut like the Mix Fold 2, but still having that free-flowing hinge flex mode design. The hinge on the Mix Fold 2 isn't terrible, but I just kind of love how stiff yet smooth the hinge is on the Z Fold 4. It just feels way nicer. Alright, so both of these phones are actually using Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 processor, which right now is the best flagship processor on Android at the moment. And I will say that in terms of, day-to-day usage, I really couldn't tell if one phone is slower than the other. Now, what is definitely slower is Samsung's wired charging speeds, which only goes up to 25 watts, whereas the Mix Fold 2 can charge up to 67 watts, which can fully charge the phone up to 100% in about 45 minutes. Now, if you are a fan of wireless charging though, the Z Fold 4 has it and the Mix Fold 2 does not. I would have loved to have wireless charging on this phone, but the 67 watt charging definitely makes up for it. Now, one thing I will mention though on the software front is that the Z Fold 4 feels more refined and more complete than on Xiaomi's Mix Fold 2. I love the dock at the bottom of the Z Fold 4 so I can quickly access apps with just a tap or drag them to the side to do a split screen action. On the Mix Fold 2, you'd have to launch the app first, go into the app switcher tab and hold on to one of the apps and you can hit split screen and then select the second app. It's just a lot faster on the Z Fold 4, which I really like. Oh, and speaking of fast, you can also build a super quick website with channel sponsor Squarespace, who sponsored a portion of this video. So I partnered up with Squarespace after years of using their service so that I can have a premium looking website where people can see some of the work that I've done in the past, and it's also a way for brands or clients to reach out and work with me. Now, what's cool about Squarespace is that you can build a website from scratch or use Squarespace's amazing selection of templates. They have a ton that you can choose from, whether you want a photography website or maybe you want to set up an online store. Designing your website is super easy and you don't need to know how to code, which is probably the best part about using Squarespace. Now, for my website alone, it took me about an hour to get it all up and running and I didn't write a single code. But what I really like the most though is that once you have your website all built out, it'll automatically resize your website to be more mobile friendly, so you don't have to, do all the hard work optimizing for both desktop, mobile, and tablets. We're on our phones more and more, so having my website automatically optimized for mobile is such a great feature and one that I really appreciate. Now, if you've been wanting to build your dream website, make sure to check out the first link down below and check out Squarespace. You can get a free trial and 10% off by using the first link in the description or go to squarespace.com/MarkL. Again, special thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring a portion of this video. Okay, so cameras. This is still a super important topic when comparing foldables. Even though cameras on foldables aren't much of a priority here, or do both OEMs care to put the best of the best cameras on their Fold line? In my opinion, the main camera and the ultra wide on the Mix Fold 2 is a lot better than the Z Fold 4, but the Z Fold 4 has a cleaner telephoto lens, but also extends farther with 3x versus 2x on the Mix Fold 2. The Z Fold 4 isn't bad by any means, but when it comes to, day-to-day shooting, something casual that you can just post on social or share with friends, 9 times out of 10, I actually enjoy the quality on the Mix Fold 2 more than the Z Fold 4. Also, having that Leica stamp on the camera on the Mix Fold 2 adds a nice touch of color processing, which I personally like more. The photos just look more balanced with the right amount of contrast, and the over sharpening isn't that crazy, whereas the Z Fold 4, it can be a bit messy and underwhelming at times, with its post-processing leaving pictures a little bit too sharp or muddy at times. Now, one thing I will give Samsung props for though on the camera front is just how flexible it is to shoot with the Z Fold 4. And what I mean by this is that you can put the Fold down and set it up in an angle, shoot with the back cameras or the front-facing cameras without a problem thanks to Flex Mode. Now, since the hinge on the Mix Fold 2 isn't as good as the one on Samsung's Z Fold 4, you can't really pull this off. But here's the thing about these phones though, you're not buying foldables to have the best camera system. You buy something like the Pixel 7 Pro or the Xiaomi 12S Ultra to take the best photos and videos. Now, those phones are going to feature the best camera systems, whereas these foldables prioritizes design and how it'll take the future of the foldables to the next level. Now, don't get me wrong, the cameras aren't terrible, they're still good, but they're not gonna have the best sensors or you're not gonna have the best looking photo. And yeah, so to wrap it all up for you guys, I actually prefer the Mix Fold 2 just because of its design and the fact that I don't really have to use the inner display to use it. Using the cover screen on the Z Fold 4 just feels too cramped that it's not enjoyable at all. Plus, it's a lot thicker, which also feels weird when it's folded. The Mix Fold 2, feels like an ordinary smartphone that we've been using for the last few years, and the cover screen just looks great. It gets really bright, and it's just a fun phone to use, folded or unfolded. Plus, the bigger display is just so much more enjoyable with games. Now, the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2 is also slightly cheaper than the Z Fold 4, coming in around $1,500 versus the $1,800 price tag on the Z Fold 4. But here's the thing, the Mix Fold 2 is a China exclusive phone, while the Z Fold 4 you can pretty much buy anywhere and you'll have access to really good trade-in deals. But if you know how to use the internet, you can definitely find a way to get your hands on the Mix Fold 2 in the US, which again is my pick for the best foldable this year. Samsung's got great software where it's almost perfect and the hinge with Flex Mode is dope. But I just prefer the bigger display, the slimmer form factor, and the fact that I can use the phone like a normal smartphone when it's folded comes in clutch.